Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Tommy Brzee. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, and we have a great show for you today. We are going to be focusing a lot on the NFL Draft today. Obviously, the draft week just started. We're about a little over 48 hours away from the first name being called, so today I wanted to start with going through my position rankings. I'll first go through all the offensive positions and then go through all the defensive. So Top 10 Tuesday, we will have a ton of top 10s today. But then after we get through all the rankings of all the players in the draft, we will get to some spring game takeaways. We weren't quite able to finish up with all the games that happened on Saturday yesterday, so wanted to get to USC, Florida State, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M today, and then we'll finish it up with a Top 10 Tuesday, and I will give you my favorite players in this draft, my favorite prospects, kind of just guys that I really like the way they play, or I think they're going to be incredible at the next level, what have you. So I'll break that down at the end of the show, but before we jump into everything, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question or comment on the screen, and we can have a fun back and forth here, is to use the tip and donation link at the bottom of the screen, GSMCpodcast.net. It's a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all. You get to have your question on the screen, puts you at the top of the list, and we get to have fun back and forth here. But let's jump in and let's start talking about the offensive side of the ball for these rankings, because there are so many incredible positions in this draft, but it feels like the two that really stand out above the pack are offensive line, particularly offensive tackle, and wide receiver. So we're going to jump into both of those, and I have the offensive rankings right here. So tons to break down in this. I did include offensive line kind of as a whole position group. Obviously, there's interior and offensive tackles, but just to make the list even on either side of the ball, figured I would just group offensive line together, but we're going to see a lot of offensive tackles. So it all starts with Joe Alt, in my opinion, and I think in pretty much everyone's opinion. The dude's an athletic freak. He's so rangy, so his ability to pretty much play wherever you need him to on the line is really remarkable. I think he is a slam dunk top 10 pick. I would be very surprised, honestly, if he made it past number 7 at the Titans. So I think this is obviously the number one offensive tackle, the obvious number one offensive lineman, and I think we'll continue to hear that throughout this process, and I'm sure we will hear his name first when it comes to offensive linemen in this draft. And then I have J.C. Latham, the Bama right tackle. I think this is a kid that definitely had some tough moments, definitely in that Michigan game, on that final play, got blown up a little bit, but it definitely has elite size, elite athletic ability, and definitely is someone that I think if the Chargers do end up trading down, which I expect them to do with the Vikings, I think this is a guy that could definitely go at that 11 spot to the Chargers, because they need as much protection for Justin Herbert as possible. But then we get into some other guys. We got Olu Fashanu is a guy that just held down that spot at Penn State last year, was a huge piece for that offensive line. You have Talise Fuaga, who might be the most athletic guy in this entire group. He's just remarkable at offensive tackle for Oregon State last year. Trof Fautanu is another guy that is just remarkable. The ability is just insane. He can play tackle if you need him to, but definitely is more of a guard. Can just absolutely overpower people whenever you really need him to. Amarius Mims is kind of a toss-up. A ton of athletic ability on this kid, but definitely had some injury trouble. There's definitely some worries around him, but I think he's definitely going in the first round, partly because so many people need an offensive tackle, and when a guy's 6'8" and 350, it's hard to pass up on that guy. So Amarius Mims, I do expect to go in the first round. Jackson Powers Johnson is someone I've seen kind of fall lately. I think Graham Barton has been getting some love at that center position for being the number one center off the board, but as far as I can see, Jackson Powers Johnson is comfortably the best center in this class. I think Graham Barton is incredible, don't get me wrong, but I just think Jackson Powers Johnson had a remarkable year at Oregon. I think he's someone that can be a starter right from the get-go, and you see teams like the Eagles, you see a ton of other teams really that need that interior line help. So I think Jackson Powers Johnson is someone definitely to watch at that position. Then you have Tyler Guyton. He's someone that is definitely really remarkable. I think in these offensive tackles, I definitely could have flipped him with Amarius Mims. I think he's someone that will go later in the first round, but at the end of the day will be very, very good for whatever team he goes to. I've seen him time and again going to the Cowboys at 24, so would not be surprised there. Then I have Connor Beebe, who's someone who is a little bit lower on boards for most people than it is for me. I think this is a guy that was just remarkable for Kansas State and kind of was that linchpin for that offensive line, at least for that 3-year stretch that he was just so dominant in the Big 12. So a little bit undersized, but definitely a guy that has tons of ability and will be working his butt off to be incredible at the next level. And then I finish it out with Jordan Morgan, another guy that could sneak into the first round, along with Roger Rosengarter from Washington, two guys that I find are sitting somewhere around the 30 mark in the first round. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone snaps them up. But let's keep it moving here because we got a ton of names to get through. Tight ends, the number one is easy. It's Brock Bowers. I think he is one of, if not the best straight-up prospect in this class. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is right up there with him, but this dude is just remarkable. His athletic ability is off the charts, obviously. He does stuff that I've never seen be done by a tight end. Obviously, the blocking is a worry. The overall size is definitely a worry, but I think when you put this guy in the right situation and put the ball in his hands, good things happen. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Then I have JioSaavn Sanders, and I totally get he kind of has the same issue of Brock Bowers, where the blocking is not necessarily where you want it to be, but elite pass catcher, a guy that will totally transform your offense and definitely make you a for real offensive team, especially from that tight end position. So probably won't be going to one of those teams that has a very good pass catching tight end already, but if you have a dirty work guy, as it were, and then you need someone to kind of polish it off in the pass catching game, I think JioSaavn Sanders is a great choice there. Ben Sinnott is Kyle Juszczyk to me. He reminds me so much of that guy. I think he's a remarkable H-back. I think he's someone that you can line up all over the field, and he'll do literally whatever you ask him to do. So really like that kid. Think he's really talented and maybe a little bit undervalued, to be totally honest. Dallin Holker is a guy out of Colorado State that made that remarkable play in the combine where he caught two passes in. He caught one pass, held on to it, and then caught one with his other hand on the gauntlet, which was just weird athleticism that I did not expect to see during the combine. But he's really remarkable. He's a guy that I think kind of has that Sam Laporta type vibe to me. I think he's going to be definitely someone that you can pick up a little bit later in the draft, but could have a huge effect in his rookie year. Then you have Theo Johnson, just an athletic freak. Cade Stover is a guy that has been consistent as can be when he was at Ohio State, can do a ton of different things offensively. So I think teams would definitely fall in love with him. Jaheim Bell, kind of the same thing as Theo Johnson or JioSaavn Sanders, honestly. A elite pass catcher, not necessarily the biggest guy in the world, but definitely can add something to your offense. Tip Riemann is a guy from Illinois that is just as consistent as it comes. I think he's a fantastic blocker among this group that struggles a little bit. I mean, you have Ben Sinnott, you have Dallin Holker, but in terms of elite blockers, you don't have necessarily a ton to choose from, but these two guys, Tip Riemann and A.J. Barner from Michigan, are very, very good at that point, and that's just because, Big Ten football, you absolutely have to be, pretty much, if you want to get recruited. And then I have Devin Culp at 10, and that's someone that is a little bit off the radar for most people, but I think his athletic ability is just insane, and I think he's definitely worth taking a flyer on later in the draft just to get that athletic ability on your team, to be totally honest with you. Then we get to the group that was by far the hardest to rank in the wide receivers, and I left a name off here that I'll get to here in a second that I probably should have put on, to be totally honest, but Marvin Harrison Jr. sets it off. He is the most NFL-ready, maybe prospect in this entire draft. Just remarkable. Definitely probably didn't help his case necessarily throughout the draft process, not working out and stuff, but I don't necessarily think he did too much to hurt his case by any means. I think he will go forward to the Cardinals, and they will be very happy they made that decision. Then I have Malik Neighbors. I did have Rome Odunze early on in this process as my number 2 wide receiver. I've kind of changed tunes on that. I think Malik Neighbors' ability to separate, I think his athletic ability and kind of just lining him up wherever you want on the field just makes him a little bit more of a factor than Rome Odunze will be, at least in his early years in the NFL. But then I have Brian Thomas at 4. I think in terms of athletic ability, he might just be second to only Marvin Harrison Jr. in this group. He's just remarkable. Someone that can absolutely change the game for you. Very tall, very fast, just really incredible. Incredible player that I think could become a elite NFL receiver, to be totally honest with you. Then you get into the group that is really hard to rank. You have A.D. Mitchell, I have at 5. I think his athletic ability, much like Brian Thomas, is just too good to pass up. I think you have Xavier Worthy at 6, someone that can totally change the complexion of a game just when you put the ball in his hands. And then I have Ladd McConkey at 7. I think this is one of the most overlooked players in this entire draft. I think wherever he is taken, he is going to make his team very, very happy. He's just a remarkable kid. I think his route running is honestly as good as anyone in this draft, maybe better than everyone else in this draft. So I think he's someone that no matter where you get him, you're getting a receiver that is going to show up every day, is going to give you a lot of good reps, and pretty much catch everything that comes his way. So huge fan of Ladd McConkey. I think he's going to make a huge difference at the next level. Then I have Troy Franklin at 8. I think he's someone that is a little bit undervalued in this whole craziness that is the wide receiver class. I think he's someone that can be a huge difference maker, kind of a weird hybrid almost between Ladd McConkey and Xavier Worthy, where you have the speed, you have the elite ability, but that route running is not a slouch by any means. So very excited for this kid. I think it's going to take him some time and might be more of a gadget guy early on, but definitely has the ability to become a very good wide receiver at the next level. This is probably where I made a mistake, honestly. I probably would have put Ricky Pearsall in here at the 9 spot over Leggett and then move everyone down 1 spot. But to be at the end of the day, these two guys are just remarkable, and Xavier Leggett and Malachi Corley. I think both of these guys are very different receivers, to be totally honest. Malachi Corley is a little bit more of a polished kind of a slot receiver mainly, and then you have Xavier Leggett, which is just an athletic freak, remarkably fast, incredibly strong, just one of those guys that absolutely jumps off the page when you see him play. So I think Ricky Pearsall, these 3 in general, or really the back 5 of this list, are really bunched together very closely, and there's guys off this list that I will talk about later that are just remarkable. So this wide receiver class is pretty much as deep as I've ever seen it. But let's move on to the backfield, and let's start with the running backs. I do have Jonathan Brooks as my top running back in this class. I think he's the most complete of the group. I think other guys have some attributes that are just remarkable, but I think Jonathan Brooks, from a pass catching standpoint, from hitting the whole vision, all of the things that you need, he doesn't necessarily, jump off the page in any one specific factor, but I do think he does everything remarkably well. So I think he will be the first running back off the board. Then I have Trey Benson, who I think is a remarkably good player, can pass catch, can do a ton of really, really good things on the offensive side of the ball. Jalen Wright has just outright speed. I don't think I need to worry about him too much. He's just get the ball in his hands and let him work, kind of a oh my gosh, the Texas A&M running back. Why am I blanking on his name? Devin Achane, excuse me. Definitely someone that can just change a game the second you put it in his hands. Braylon Allen definitely does struggle catching the ball out of the backfield. That's my biggest worry for him. But if you're a team that just wants to run the ball over and over and over again, I wouldn't necessarily fault you at all if taking Braylon Allen. I think he's someone that can be that down in, down out back, and maybe you'll, utilize his ability pretty early on in his career, but at the end of the day, he's someone that if you're not going to get the greatest pass catching in the world out of him, he can run between the tackles with the best. He might be the best in between the tackle runner in this entire class. So really like him. I think Bucky Irving is one of the most complete of this group. I think him catching the ball out of the backfield is an absolute weapon for whatever team he's drafted to. Would definitely want him next to a established running back, maybe like a Derrick Henry or someone that's a little bit more of a traditional running back. But if you can utilize this kid the right way, he's just going to be incredible at the next level. Then I have Blake Corum. I think he's someone that you got into the draft process and you almost expected him to be the number 1 running back, right? The remarkable things he did at Michigan felt like he was going to be the guy, but not necessarily the greatest pass catcher, a little bit undersized, so definitely some question marks around him, but we know what the dude's about. He absolutely loves football. I know he's going to put forth his best effort every single Sunday, so I think he's someone that no matter where he goes, I think he will play a part in whatever teams he's on. Audric Estime is a guy that's kind of the same type of vibe. I think he has a ton of ability. I think the pass catching leaves a little bit to be desired, to be totally honest, but definitely has between the tackle ability and is someone that could definitely make a team very, very happy in that short yardage situation. Marshawn Lloyd is a guy that I think is super athletic. He's someone that I think right now you're kind of working with a little bit of a project, but if you can make it happen and you can get the most out of him, he could be an elite running back at the next level. I think he never quite hit his full stride in college, was at USC, then to South Carolina, so had some bouncing around happening during his career. I think once he gets to set his feet and really figure out an offense, I think he could just be remarkable. Kamani Vidal is a guy from Troy that really showed up during the combine, was someone that tested off the charts, and very, very excited to see what he can do at the next level. And then Will Shipley. I think he's someone that his pass catching ability speaks for itself. There's something about him with the ball in his hands in open field that is just special. So I think he's someone that, along with kind of a Bucky Irving character, where you'd like him next to a very established, more traditional running back, but get him the ball in weird situations or get him the ball in screens, and he'll make stuff happen for you, that's for sure. But finally, let's get to the position everyone's been waiting on in quarterback. And the top three guys here will be the top three guys off the board in my mind. I think Caleb Williams is the best quarterback prospect, although I do not think there is this massive gap between him and Jaden Daniels. I think is actually very, very slim. I think there's actually a bigger gap between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Although I really like Drake May, and he is that prototypical pro quarterback that you kind of build in a lab, I think he does make some head-scratching plays where you're gonna want him to possibly sit a year, possibly learn the offense a little bit before you throw him to the Wolves, but he might just be thrown to the Wolves because I think he's going to get drafted number 3 overall to the Patriots, and I think he'll be their starter. I worry that he's going to take a little bit longer to get up to speed. Then I have J.J. McCarthy. I think he's a guy that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on. Some think he shouldn't be drafted even in the first 2 rounds. Some think he should be the second quarterback off the board. I tend to be kind of in that group that I think he has all the tools. I think he has a ton of stuff that you can look at and say, that's really, really good. But there's just not a ton of that, right? There's not a ton of volume. There's not a ton of ability to say, okay, I know he can do that every single play for, a 12-play drive. He can execute an offense. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to, the elite stuff that you see in flashes, if you could see it more consistently, you feel much more confident in him. But I definitely think he's someone that I think he'll go number 5 to the Vikings. I think they'll trade up and grab him. And when they do that, I think he's being drafted into the best situation of this group. So I think he could definitely succeed, but it's going to take him some time, I think, to be comfortable taking full reins of a offense, to be totally honest with you. Then I kind of get a little contrarian here. I think Bo Nix is just a better prospect than Michael Penix. I think his athletic ability gives him a higher floor, a higher upside as well. I think Michael Penix, the injury history worries me a little bit. I think his throwing motion is a little bit long for me. There's definitely some things in there that just put him at a little bit more risk than Bo Nix would. I don't think necessarily either of those guys are long-term starters in the NFL, but definitely can be guys that could spot start for you or be really good backups in the future. And then you get to kind of the later rounds. I have Michael Pratt at 7, Spencer Rattler 8, Carter Bradley from South Alabama at 9, and then Jordan Travis to round out the list. So a group of quarterbacks that are kind of confusing to peg. I think Caleb Williams is comfortably number 1 pick. I think you can pretty much pen that in right now. But at the end of the day, I think Jaden Daniels is someone that is an absolute game changer. He's someone that I think if you draft him, and if for some reason, it's not going to happen, but if for some reason the Bears were to draft Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams, I might be one of the few people in the world that does not mind that decision at all. So it'll be really interesting to see this class develop. I think there's a lot of talent in this class. I worry that there's not too many sure things in this class. Maybe zero sure things in this class, to be totally honest with you. But I think when you look at Caleb Williams, the ability is impossible to deny. And then Jaden Daniels is just remarkable. And then everyone else, I have a pretty big question mark next to their name, I'll be honest. But that will do it for the offensive rankings. I know that's a ton of names to get to. just wanted to give you guys an idea of where I stand on all these positions. But we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we'll get to the defense. We'll do the same thing we just did. We'll break down everything from defensive tackle to edge to corners, and we will do every position top 10 and give you guys an idea of where the defense sits. So stick with us, and we will be right back with that.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just got to all of the positional rankings for the offensive side of the ball for this upcoming draft that is happening or starting on Thursday. But now let's get to the defense. There's tons of talent throughout this defensive class. I think it all starts with the defensive tackles, to be totally honest with you. I do believe that Byron Murphy is probably the best defensive player in this class, and I have him as the number one defensive tackle in this group. I think it is pretty clear to me that this is a guy that is athletic ability, speed. He can do literally anything you want him to do. A guy that can go down to two knees against, 300-pound offensive linemen and then blow up a play is someone that doesn't come around too often. So I think he's someone that could sneak up into the first, in the top 10, honestly, to be totally honest with you. But I would expect him to go a little bit later in the first round, but we'll see what happens. He's definitely someone that has really, really high upside. Johnny Newton is a guy from Illinois that definitely is kind of the same build, definitely a little bit more of a run stopper, but has remarkable athletic ability as well. Is someone that has played remarkable football in the Big Ten, although being a little bit overshadowed while being at Illinois. I think he's just a remarkable player and definitely will be a first-year starter, will definitely be a huge run stopper to start, and then you kind of just let him loose and do his thing. Braden Fisk is one of the more underappreciated prospects in this entire group. I think he's just remarkable. I think his ability, we saw it towards the end of last season when they absolutely needed him. He showed up huge in those games. So I think he's someone that can totally change the way a team plays their defensive fronts because he's so versatile, because he can play inside, outside, 3 technique, 5 technique, or 1. He's just incredible. I think he's someone that no team will regret drafting him by any means. You have Rookie Aroro, you have Chris Jenkins, Marshawn Neeland is someone that I've heard more and more about as we get closer and closer. I think people are slowly falling in love with this kid because of his elite athletic ability. Dwayne Carter is one of the best run stoppers in the entire country a year ago, will definitely be a huge asset for a team going forward. Michael Hall Jr., kind of the same thing. One of the very few defensive players to leave Ohio State, but a very talented kid. Leonard Taylor III definitely is a, big space eater type guy at the next level. Not necessarily the most athletically inclined, but definitely someone that can make a difference for your team. And then Mason Smith is the guy I have rounding out this list. And I think this is kind of a potential pick. I think you pick him knowing that he will only get better, knowing he will only take strides. And I think, honestly, I've said this a couple of times on this show, that I think he should have gone back to LSU for one more year, but he's made his way into the NFL, and he can still develop there. It will just take a little bit more time, I think, than some other guys on that list. But let's move over to edge rushing, and this is another group that is just remarkably deep. One of the best groups in the entire class. I think offensive tackle and wide receiver are the only ones that really have this beat. But I start with Liatzi Latu. I think he is the most complete, most professional rusher in this entire group. I think he's someone that honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up next year and had 10 sacks as a rookie. I think he's so complete as a pass rusher, and I think there are some worries technically about his overall athletic ability, but when you see that guy get have so much in his bag in terms of pass rushing, it's hard to pass up on him. Then I have Jared Verse at 2. I think his athletic ability is off the charts. He plays the game in such an aggressive style. I think he's someone that is going to really jump off the page. Will probably go later in the first round if I had to imagine, but definitely has the ability to be a big time player pretty much right away. Dallas Turner has been the guy that has been pegged for quite some time, honestly, as the number one defensive player off the board, but I just don't necessarily see him on the same pedestal as some other people do. I think his athletic ability is remarkable. I think he could definitely be a game changer. I just think it's going to take him some time to kind of fill out physically, get a couple more pass rush moves in his bag, and become the pass rusher he definitely can be, but is still a little bit away from being. And then you have Darius Robinson and Chop Robinson, two guys that were just remarkable for this team. Chop Robinson is honestly only second athletically probably to Jared Verse. He's just remarkable coming off the edge. They had to replace him with their best player in Abdul Carter this year for Penn State. So I think Chop Robinson is just going to be remarkable at the next level, and you'll be able to utilize him in a number of different ways, which is something defensive coordinators love to hear. So I love that kid. I think he's someone that is going to be a huge difference maker. I think Jonah Ellis is one of the most underappreciated defensive ends in this group. I think he is a very professional rusher, much like Latu is. Excuse me. And I think he's just someone that can definitely be a great. Will make every play. Will make the right play pretty much every time. Will not get you into trouble. Will not overplay his hand. Will not do anything to really hurt himself necessarily. And then will just be in the right position. And then you have Braylon Trice. I think he has huge upside. Gabriel Murphy, the exact same thing. I think Adisa Isaac is a little bit of a project, but definitely has the athletic ability to be elite at the next level. And Chris Braswell, kind of the same thing. I think he's someone that obviously can handle that real strength of, the SEC offensive lineman, but probably will take some time to get to where he needs to be as a pass rusher in terms of the technical work that goes into that. But let's move back a little bit and let's go to the other part of the front seven, the linebackers. It starts with Edrin Cooper. I think this is comfortably the best linebacker in this group. The most complete, can do literally everything on the field, is a game manager, is really the quarterback of that defense, has been for quite some time at Texas A&M, and definitely can be at the next level. So really like him. I think Peyton Wilson is an athletic freak. He can do literally whatever you need him to do. I tend to believe he'll be kind of in more of a pass rush type role at the next level, but you can put him wherever you need him to be, and he'll make plays for you, that's for sure. I think Jeremiah Trotter is someone that is as consistent as they come. He's not going to miss a lot of tackles. He's going to be a great linchpin for a defense wherever he gets drafted. I think Junior Colson's kind of the exact same. A dude that is super athletic, makes just insane amounts of tackles. I mean, we saw it at Michigan. He was their leading tackler, I believe, the last 2 years. So someone that is an absolute game changer, will be someone that will probably get taken a little bit later in the draft, but definitely will make a team very happy. Tyron Hooper is someone that transferred from Florida to Mizzou and really showed off his athletic ability. I think he's just remarkable at that position. Javon Solomon from Troy, kind of the same thing. Maris Leafau is someone that definitely needs some work in terms of filling out and becoming that middle linebacker that he's capable of being, but definitely has ability. I think Jalen Ford is a little bit of a project as well, but showed off his athletic ability at Texas, especially in coverage. I think had 4 picks one of his years, so definitely a lot of athleticism at that position. Braden McGregor is a guy that I think is getting overlooked in this group. Definitely a really good, I think more of a pass rushing option, kind of like Peyton Wilson. And then you have Traven Wallace, who I think is a beast. He's so athletic. He's so rangy. He's someone that if you put him next to, a Jeremiah Trotter type, a guy that is a really, really solid middle linebacker, and then just let him roam, I think he could just be incredible. But let's move to the back end, and let's get to the cornerbacks. And I think Quinyon Mitchell starts it off here pretty comfortably. I think he is so complete. His physical ability, his strength at the point of attack is something that's just remarkable. But I think Terrion Arnold is not really far behind him. I think his technical ability in terms of coverage, and especially playing press coverage, is pretty remarkable, especially for his size. I think he's someone that definitely has not hit his ceiling yet and will have plenty of more work to do. And then you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, his running mate at Alabama. Athletic ability, speed, everything is just off the charts with this kid. So definitely really like him. I think he could be a difference maker all over the field, to be totally honest with you. Cooper DeJean is a guy that won't just make his money as a cornerback, will definitely be a punt returner at the next level, and will make some plays there. There's no two ways about that. Nate Wiggins has athletic ability out the wazoo, is someone that is as fast as anyone in this entire class, can definitely make up ground if he, loses a guy possibly in zone coverage, can definitely make up ground and make a spectacular play. Kamari Lassiter, in my opinion, is the most underrated of this group. I think he's someone that, if you look at his time at UGA, there were very few times where this guy got exposed. There's definitely some speed related issues, I think, but put him in the right situation, probably a boundary corner, I think he's someone that could be a total game changer. Then you have Mike Sandristril. I think he's someone that is kind of in an interesting position because he is a slot corner, is not necessarily as highly touted as the rest of these guys, but is just remarkable. Plays football the right way, plays football like he's got rent due, is just remarkable. So I think he's someone that I really expect to be a huge game changer at the next level. I have Enos Rackstraw and Chris Abrams-Drain here, the Mizzou duo at 9 and 10. I think they're a really remarkable group. I think Enos Rackstraw is just a little bit more physically capable, at least to start off his career, I think. And then TJ Tampa is a guy that might be a little bit later in the draft, but plays fast, is really aggressive at the point of attack, and I think will be a really, really good piece for a team going forward. Maybe not next year, but throughout his career, I think he could be a huge piece. And then we'll get to the safeties, kind of probably the worst position group in the entire class, to be totally honest with you, but still some really good names here. I start with Javon Bullard. I think he plays the game the way you want a safety to play the game. Definitely a little bit more of that nickelback kind of position, but can play boundary safety, can play free safety, and just flies downhill. Someone that teams are going to absolutely fall in love with in practice because he's going to pop pads, that's for sure. I think the guy right behind him is Cole Bishop. I think he's a very complete player, can definitely do a ton of different things. Will be someone that might take a little bit of time to fill out physically, but definitely plays the game really strong. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes by any means, and is definitely someone that, while he was at Utah, was the linchpin of that back end for sure. Then you have Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, really remarkable player. Jaden Hicks keeps getting love from Washington State. I think he's slowly climbing up the boards. Trey Taylor is the guy in this group that I think is getting overlooked, though. His athletic ability, especially in the pass rush game, where you don't necessarily have as many safeties, pass rushing these days. You had Jamal Adams. You have some other guys that dabble in it from time to time, but this is a kid that you can absolutely fly off the edge and hit a quarterback where he's not getting up for a minute. So I think he's someone that might go a little bit later, but could be an absolute game changer for a team. You have Kalen Bullock from USC, Tyke Smith from UGA is a very complete player. Jalen Simpson from Auburn is a guy that I think has a ton of upside, just needs a little bit of time to kind of learn the intricacies of that safety position. Then you have Cameron Kitchens, who did not necessarily have the greatest pre-draft period, but has tons of really good tape from Miami. And then you have Damani Richardson to finish it out at Texas A&M. All, guys that definitely have some question marks. It could be a class that has maybe only one or two of these guys actually hit, and some of those guys could not be on this list. But at the end of the day, I think there's a group of guys in this group, or in this safety group, that definitely could make a difference for their team. I think they're guys that play really fast. I think Javon Bullard's a guy that teams are just going to fall in love with. Whoever drafts him is going to absolutely love this kid, and I think keeping him off the field is not going to be easy. But that'll do it for the rankings. I know that was a lot of names, a lot of information to throw at you, but wanted to make sure you guys got an idea of where I sat with all of these position groups, who I thought was kind of setting the pace at each position group, and who I thought was kind of lagging behind a little bit. But we're going to take our second break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some spring games, get back to the college football world, talk a little bit about USC, Florida State, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M. They were in action on Saturday, and there was a lot to talk about. So we will break that down right after this. So stick with us.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the defensive positions in the NFL Draft, gave you my rankings for all of those positions. Definitely a lot of names. I apologize for all of the names and the inundated of information, but let's get to spring games. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. We got to Texas, Oklahoma, and Michigan, but tons of more games to break down. So let's start with USC. And this one was not necessarily what I expected, to be totally honest with you. The defense made a number of really good plays during this game, especially on that back end. Now, the problem with that is the quarterbacks did not play very well. Jade Mayava and Miller Moss both had picks during this game. Jade Mayava had probably a little bit of a better game, but neither had the day that they wanted, and that's definitely not what you wanted to hear or what you expected to hear if you're a USC fan. I think when you look at this defense, obviously you want to see good signs from it. Obviously you want players to be making plays, so definitely good to see the back end making some of those picks, but at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think when you're USC, the quarterback is where your money is made, and it has to be. So Miller Moss is someone that absolutely exploded onto the scene during the bowl game, but it's kind of tapered off slowly, or has, I guess, tapered off throughout the spring and had a really tough day, but I think he's still the starter for the time being. It'll be really interesting to watch this unfold because it doesn't feel like USC necessarily has what they want at quarterback, at least right now. But the defensive line, we talked about the back end. It was really solid for most of the day. The defensive line was not. There was pretty much not much to be talked about with the defensive line. They had one tackle for loss on a sack later in the game, so not necessarily the production that you were needing. Now, Bear Alexander did not play, who is expected to be the best player on that defensive line, but you need more guys. Last year, you saw Bear Alexander, do his best to fight through double teams and all of that type of stuff, but when you don't have multiple guys on that defensive line, it gets a little bit tough for that one player to be the difference maker that he's capable of being. So overall, I think this defense is making strides. I think D'Anton Lynn has come in from UCLA and made some differences pretty much right away. It feels like this team plays with more energy. It feels like on defense they just play a little bit harder than they have in the past, which has been a problem for Lincoln Riley's defenses and for quite some time, but he's finally started to make some strides to fix that, and I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. Now, I want USC fans to not get too excited because it's going to move rather slowly in that direction, to be totally honest with you. I don't necessarily think they're going to be, overly hurting necessarily for these next couple of years, but it's going to be tough. I think they will be pretty much well below average this upcoming year. I think it's going to be incredibly tough to even be average this upcoming year just because of the personnel they have. Now they're doing incredible things to rectify that throughout the next couple of years, but at the end of the day, that takes a ton of time. To build out what Lincoln Riley is picturing in his head is a really hard thing to do. So I think USC has taken steps that I honestly had not expected them to take at this point, but still a very long way to go. But as we talked about, the quarterback play was not ideal. Jade Mayava did show off his athletic ability with some designed runs during the game, but there's not necessarily that elite guy that you've had with Lincoln Riley offenses in the past. I think Miller Moss will likely be the guy that lines up under center in week one, but who knows? There's a ton of question marks around that position right now where I'm sure USC fans did not necessarily expect to see question marks. I mean, all three quarterbacks for USC combined for 396 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 picks, with Miller Moss throwing 2 of them. So there's not a lot to be super happy about necessarily at the quarterback position, but when you have Lincoln Riley, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. You got to feel like he's going to be able to figure it out. So I think they'll be just fine. I think they're kind of in a weird spot where I expect them to honestly struggle as they step into the Big Ten, but I think they're making the right steps. I think it'll take time, especially with making the step into the Big Ten where physicality is only going to ramp up and the aggression is only going to ramp up. But the steps are being taken, and it's going to take some time for the benefits to be reaped, but there's definitely a palpable change within USC the last little bit. But let's move on to USC, or not USC, we just did USC. Let's move on to Florida State, and let's talk about, first of all, the most pressing topic around this game that has to be talked about off the top. Those quarterback jerseys stunk. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. I get the idea, but man, those were rough. But let's move on to the actual football. DJ Uiagalelei was DJ Uiagalelei, which is not necessarily what you want to hear if you're a Florida State fan. He, throughout his college career, has been the guy that has shown these remarkable flashes of arm talent and of athletic ability, and then for the next 3 drives, he looks totally flat. And then he'll show you another flash of remarkable athletic ability or arm talent, and then he'll be, really inconsistent for the next 3 drives. So it's that frustrating cycle that has gotten DJ in this position that he's in right now. But it seemed like he was making strides in the spring for Florida State, but it did not look great necessarily on Saturday. I think he will figure it out, but they're going to need more from him than they got on Saturday if they really want to compete for a national title this upcoming year. The good thing for them is the running game looked really strong. You had guys like Roydell Williams, who came in from Alabama, Lawrence Toafili, who was a huge part of that offense down the stretch as they dealt with Jordan Travis not being in the lineup. You had Keziah Holmes also had a touchdown. Jalen Lucas showed off his athletic ability. So tons to work with in that running back room, but you're going to need DJ to give you a little bit more, even with that running game probably being as good as it's going to be. The defensive side of the ball looked really solid, pretty much top to bottom. I think the back end looks really elite. You have Fentrell Cypress coming back for a second year, but Azariah Thomas is someone that really showed out in this game, is definitely someone that could be kind of the next, big-time cornerback at Florida State, could definitely be their lockdown guy, their number 1 guy this upcoming year. Super physical, I think. He's someone that is going to be huge. I think this entire group, to be totally honest with you, on the back end for Florida State might be the strength of this defense. But the edges are giving them a good run for their money. I think the play from the edges were just remarkable on Saturday. You have someone like Marvin Jones coming in from UGA. He showed off his athletic ability. You have tons of other guys at that position that are going to make difference-making plays, but Marvin Jones is someone they probably needed to come in and make a couple of plays to start off, and he did exactly that. But one of the biggest takeaways from the day, and definitely the low light of the day, was Malik Benson, their expected number 1 wide receiver, being carted off with an injury. Has plenty of time to get healthy, so hopefully he can get healthy and get back on the field, but definitely not what you wanted to see if you're a Florida State fan. But let's move on to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has plenty to look forward to in 2024. It feels like that defense is coming together really, really well. Probably will be one of the best in the country. You have Riley Leonard. But honestly, I think the thing that made most Notre Dame fans the most excited was the play of C.J. Carr, who probably won't be their starter until 25 or 26. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Riley Leonard did not play, so tons of reps for him and Steve Angeli, 2 guys that looked incredible. Both guys looked really, really strong. The wide receiver group seems to have their wide receiver 1 in Chris Mitchell. Now they have still a ways to go in that wide receiver room in terms of figuring out the pecking order and making sure everything fits into the boxes you need it to fit into, but I think the ability is there. I think you have Chris Mitchell, you have Jaden Greathouse, Bo Collins, Deion Colsey, so tons of guys in that room. You just have to be able to fit them into the right position. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of go about that this upcoming year. The O-line is also kind of a work in progress. When you're replacing someone like Joe Alt, it's never going to be easy, right? So they're definitely going to need to get a little bit better unless you want Riley Leonard kind of running for his life a lot of the time. You're going to need to get a little bit better at that offensive line and at that point of attack if you want to be the national championship contender that they're definitely capable of being. They just need that offensive line to be a little bit stronger than it has been throughout spring and it was on Saturday. That defense looks solid. I don't think there's any question about that. You have guys like Xavier Watts on the back end. You have Riley Mills in the front. You have Jason Onye was the guy that really jumped off the page on Saturday, was the standout of the day, and was just really remarkable, was all over the field. So I think they have tons of talent. I think that defensive line might be the strongest part of this team and this defense, but that back end is really good. When you have two guys like Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison, things go pretty well for the most part. So very interested to see what this defense can do because that's likely their path to a national title is having that stout defense and then having an offense that can run the ball, be aggressive at the point of attack, and pick their points in terms of the passing game. So I think they're really a good O-line away from being a playoff contender. I think Riley Leonard will make these wide receivers look a little bit better because he's going to be able to put it on them, and on target, on time is 90% of the battle in college football. So I think this is going to be a good team. There's a couple of positions that just need a little bit of fine-tuning is really the only thing that Notre Dame needs at this point. But let's move on to Texas A&M, and tons of players were out for this game, so we'll touch on a couple of things here, but not necessarily as deep of a dive on this one. The back end of the defense looks really strong in Mike Elko's first year. There were tons of elite passing attacks in that SEC, so they absolutely have to be stout on that back end, but it feels like they brought in some guys from the portal, they brought in some guys from high school, but there were definitely some guys already there that could play some really good football. Losing a guy like Jacoby Matthews to the portal is really tough, but the ability is still there on that back end, and with someone like someone like Elko calling the shots, I think they'll be just fine, to be totally honest with you. O-line is the position group that I think definitely has a lot of ability, definitely has a lot of guys that when you look at their high school rankings and you look at their measurables, is just remarkable. It just hasn't quite coalesced into a good starting five yet, but I think it definitely will. I think it's a group that will slowly start to kind of find their pacing. I think fall camp will be hugely important for them because you kind of have to hit the ground running. You play Notre Dame very early on in the year if you're Texas A&M, so you pretty much have to be ready to go from the get-go. So that O-line will be a huge thing to watch throughout summer into fall camp, but I think they'll be okay. I think the names there, I think they have enough guys to where they'll be able to mix and match and find the five that will make this work. But the guy that really stole the day was Nick Scourton, the transfer from Purdue, had 2.5 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss, a pass deflection, did just remarkable stuff. Shamar Stewart, another guy on that defensive line, had 7 tackles and a sack on the day, so this line is going to be aggressive. They're going to be very good. They have tons of talent on that line, as you have seen through the last couple of classes, but it feels like they're starting to come together and have a couple of guys that are absolute game changers in Scourton and Stewart, so very excited for this team. I think everyone knows about Texas A&M. The talent level is not to be questioned. I think there's a ton of really good players on this team. I think Connor Wegman is ready to take that next step forward, but the coaches putting them in winning positions is going to be the decider, and they have a really solid staff there, so they should be able to do that, but they'll be very interesting to watch because the last couple of years it's been a ton of ability, not a ton of results, but we'll see what happens with them. I think they definitely can hit a really high ceiling, but could hit a pretty low floor, to be totally honest with you, this upcoming year. So it'll be interesting to watch. Spring games are starting to kind of wind down. We definitely do have a couple more this upcoming weekend and going on into the next couple of weeks, so I will break those down as they come, but that will do it for this segment of the spring game takeaways, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a Top 10 Tuesday, and I will give you my favorite prospects of this class. This could be guys I just really like watching, guys that I think play the game the right way, guys that I think, are cool, I don't know, but these are just 10 guys that really stand out to me that I think will be total difference makers at the next level that maybe are getting overlooked right now, but we'll be right back with that, so stick with us.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the spring games that went on this past weekend, just finished up all of the takeaways from those games, but now it's time for a Top 10 Tuesday, and these are my favorite prospects in this draft. This is kind of a hard thing to put together because there's so many guys in this group that I really like. I've talked a number of times that I think this draft class overall is just remarkable. I think there's definitely some positions that are some question marks for sure, but I think there's tons of guys in this group that are going to be total difference makers at pretty much every position across this entire group. So I wanted to give my top 10 guys as I see it and just the guys that I am so excited to watch at the next level. It all starts with Jaden Daniels, in my opinion. I think he was the most electric player in college football last year, was an absolute treat to watch most of the games. That game against Florida is honestly one of, if not the best single game performance I have ever seen. He's someone that will make a total difference for whatever teams he's drafted in. Will put in the work that is absolutely necessary to get to that next level of what he's capable of being, because I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. I think there's some people that definitely do think he has, and there's definitely an argument to be made that there's not necessarily a ton of places to go, but when you have that athletic ability and you still have area to build out that the frame that he has, I think the sky's really the limit for this kid. So I'm very excited to see where he goes. I tend to believe it'll be number 2 to the Commanders, but who knows? Maybe Drake May leapfrogs him and goes to the Commanders, but I cannot wait to watch this kid at the next level because watching him in college was an absolute treat at LSU. But number 2 is JioSaavn Bullard. I talked about him during the safeties portion, but the dude just plays fast. He plays the game like he has nothing to lose, like it's the last time he's going to play, and just gives off the absolute right vibe from that safety position that you really want. That aggression, that intensity, and is someone that really set the pace for 2 or 3 really UGA defenses that were just remarkable throughout his time in Athens. So I think he's someone that obviously in a position group that isn't quite as strong in safety, but he definitely tops the list and is just a remarkable player. I have Braden Fisk at 3. He's someone that is being entirely overlooked in my opinion. I think there's a ton of remarkable defensive tackles in this group. I think Byron Murphy sets the pace, obviously, but Braden Fisk is someone that no matter where you get him, you're getting a very good football player. You're getting a guy that's going to show up first, leave last. He's going to do everything the way that you want him to do it. And then when he shows up on Sundays, he's going to make a couple of plays for you. So I think he might take a little bit of time to fully get up to speed at the next level, but once he does, watch out, because I think this kid is absolutely insane. You have Troy Fautanu at number 4 for me. I think this is one of the most dynamic offensive tackles or offensive linemen, in this entire group. I think he can play inside, outside, is a great run blocker, can pass block, can do just remarkable amounts of things. I think he will be a first-year starter for whatever team drafts him, and whether it's at that guard position or honestly if you wanted to move him out to tackle if you absolutely needed to, he probably has the athletic ability to do that. So it's just remarkable what this kid is capable of. Was incredible at Washington a year ago, and wherever he gets drafted this year, I think they will fall in love with him fairly quickly, to be totally honest with you. Then we have Trevin Wallace at 5. This is a guy kind of like JioSaavn Bullard, just plays football the way that I love players to do it, especially at that linebacker position. You have to be aggressive, you have to be fast, you have to play with a chip on your shoulder, and he does it to the nth degree. He's a guy that absolutely will fly through a gap and just tattoo a running back. He's someone that does just incredible stuff on the defensive side of the ball, is athletic enough to be in coverage, can do a ton of different stuff, but his real asset is his speed and his athletic ability. So he's someone that if you just kind of put him out in a rover position and let him go to work, he's just going to be remarkable for you. But number 6 for me is Brian Thomas. I talked about his athletic ability. A guy that is that big should not be that fast. That's just the plain truth. I don't know what happened with him growing up, but he's just remarkable. His athletic ability is off the charts. His catch radius is maybe second to only Marvin Harrison Jr. in this class. I think he's someone that definitely does have a couple of things that you'd love to be a little bit more crisp on. The route running is not necessarily where you'd love it to be, but in terms of that kind of Mike Williams, Chargers type position where throw it up, he's going to make a play and score a ton of touchdowns for a team, he's definitely a guy that can do that, at least early on, and then slowly develop into a more complete wide receiver that he's capable of being. At number 7, I have Ladd McConkey. I talked about him during the wide receiver group. I think he's someone that is really as complete as they come in this group. He is so good with route running. He does everything the exact way you'd want it to do, the exact way it's written out on a route tree. He does it literally the perfect way. When you saw him run through that gauntlet in the NFL Combine, that was very clear. It looked like everything was on a perfect line. The ball did not move when it hit his hands. It was just everything looked exactly how you want it to look. So Ladd McConkey, while if you were to walk up to him in a bar, he's not necessarily the most intimidating character in the world, will absolutely be a difference maker at the next level. And you can line him up in the slot, outside, you can line him up in the backfield. You can literally do whatever you want with this kid. As long as he has the ball in his hands, as long as he is on the field, he's going to make plays for you. So very excited to see what he can do at the next level. I think he's someone that could be a huge, huge difference maker, to be honest. And then I have 2 edge rushers here. Chop Robinson here at 8. I think his athletic ability is just so much fun to watch. I think he's someone that if, your favorite team drafts him, I think you'll fall in love with this kid. I think his athleticism is off the charts. I think he plays the game with an aggression that I really haven't seen very often throughout college football. He's so great with his hands, definitely has remarkable bend on that exterior. So someone that is going to be a big-time pass rusher will be really his main asset at the next level. Will not necessarily drop into coverage too much, or probably won't be a down in, down out defensive end, but will be that third down guy that will make those big plays for you. So very excited to see what he can do at the next level. I think Jonah Ellis is another guy that is definitely more overlooked than Chop Robinson. I think his athletic ability is not necessarily at the same level as a Chop Robinson or a Jared Verse or a Dallas Turner, but it's still up there. I think his ability is incredible. I think he's incredible during against the run, has really long arms, so can hold a offensive tackle at bay while he wraps up a running back, does incredible things on that edge, and does really, really just things that you absolutely need from an edge rusher. A lot of these guys in this edge rushing class are remarkable athletically, remarkable getting to the passer, but maybe don't do the mundane things quite as well. Maybe don't set the edge quite as well. Maybe don't run, aren't as great against the run, aren't as great in kind of the more bland tasks that they're asked to do. But Jonah Ellis does them to perfection. So very, very high on this kid. I think he's someone that has about as high of a floor as any edge rusher in this entire class. Very excited to see what he can do at the next level. And then at number 10, I have another Washington kid in Jalen Polk. I think he's so much fun to me. Him at wide receiver is just essentially having an Energizer bunny, and you can kind of just hand him the ball, let him fly, and do his thing. I think he's just remarkable. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rondale Moore in terms of his ability and kind of the way I see him being utilized at the next level. Now, Rondale Moore was not necessarily utilized the best way in Arizona, I would think, or if you were to ask me, but I think Jalen Polk, if he's drafted into the right situation and given the chances to, be in on gadget plays, get that end around, get the jet sweep, do whatever he needs to do, essentially, I think he could be a huge difference maker where, he's not going to be wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. He's not going to lead you in receptions or anything like that. But he's going to make a couple of plays that could affect games and could, affect the outcome of tons of stuff happening with whatever team he gets drafted to, not only this year, but down the road. So I think he's someone in this wide receiver class that is just packed to the gills, someone that you can get probably in the 3rd or 4th round that could be a difference maker pretty much right away. But there's tons to get through in this NFL draft. We will continue getting to it throughout these next couple of days. I think there's so much buildup to this draft. I feel like there's been insane amounts of talk about, Caleb Williams and the different ways that people are trying to knock him down, whether it's going to be Jaden Daniels or Drake May at number 2, what's going to happen with J.J. McCarthy. We will break all of that down actually tomorrow. I know ESPN just dropped their full 7-round mock draft, so I'll probably look over that tonight, go over it tomorrow, give you guys an idea of where we're sitting a day out from the draft. But there's going to be a ton of stuff happening, so we will continue to focus in on the draft pretty much until that first round happens, and then we'll probably react to the first round on Friday. So the rest of the week will be a lot of draft stuff. I wanted to get the tons of names and tons of lists out of the way as quickly as possible, so you guys got an idea of where I stand, and also you can, be looking at your screen and know who you're looking at when you see some of these guys called later in later rounds. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for every update and all the content you could possibly need. We have people covering baseball, basketball, women's sports, wrestling, soccer, everything you could possibly need in the world of sports. We have you covered, so definitely tune into every show that we have going around the GSMC network. But thank you once again for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow.